Nuno Espirito Santo, the coach, was talking about the match and indeed the Big Six, the whole concept of the Big Six. He said it's not only this season I feel it's changed, it's been changing for a while. The gap no longer exists in such a predominant way. Us as clubs beside the Big Six have been able to improve and compete well. The recruitment and the competition itself means that players arriving to the Premier League are a higher level. You know, you've got Newcastle and Villa who are very much up there. Brighton, Fulham and Bournemouth all pushing for European places.
A bit of a dig at Spurs, I think, from Nuno.
Well, yeah, he didn't say it. But he's not, look, you can't argue with anything he says there. And at Manchester United, which is, we're going to talk about them, and indeed a bit of City with that news on Erling Haaland. With the Guardian's man in Manchester, it is Jamie Jackson. Hi, Jamie.
Good afternoon, gentlemen.
So let's talk about Nuno's comments. As I said, it is quite difficult to deal with. You only have to look at some of the financial figures that are coming out, and you look at the wage bills of some of the big clubs, especially like Tottenham's wage bill compared. I mean, they're being outspent by Newcastle and Villa. So it's true, this concept of the Big Six doesn't quite hold water anymore, does it?
No, I mean, this is kind of why PSR and, formerly financial fair play was brought in, I suppose, to try and level it all off. What I always think about these sort of things is let's wait and see 2, 3, 4 seasons, if it continues this way. But I mean, going back as far as when Mourinho was in charge of Manchester United, he was citing, I think at City at the time, spending, 50 million on a right back, and how United basically didn't have, it changed. It was no longer United being able to sort of blow other teams out of the war, if you like, for signings. And this is one of the things actually that United are struggling with, this very concept. I think Nuno is correct for the time being. And, if you want competition in a league to sort of be vibrant and, top 4, top 5, top 6 be up for grabs, then, we've got it. And I don't think you can argue with it at all. I think it's great. And I do honestly think that this whole thing about any team could beat any other team in the Premier League on any weekend, I think that is true, but I think it's now consistently true, as in it's not just like, occasionally you're going to get that.
Yeah.
I happen to support Forest. They've got City in the FA Cup semi-final. I give them a chance, whereas I wouldn't have done before, because of what we're talking about.
Absolutely.
I suppose that the how big's a big club conversation that happens an awful lot is based on many things, isn't it? I suppose that's what you can judge the Big Six on, is history, size of crowds, what have you won, all those things. And for all those things, Forest are in that anyway. They've won absolutely everything.
2 European Cups, not so bad.
Yeah, I mean, it's a long time ago that, but I do remember it being of just about the right vintage. I mean, that's kind of why I started supporting him, to be honest. I'm actually from London, but going back to Mourinho, that's kind of what he was saying. He was sort of saying, forget about United, what you imagine United to be at the time, when he was in charge. That's over. That's sort of Ferguson era. And, and here we are sort of living it. Just going back to Forest, I kind of thought they'd fall away this season. I just did, because that's kind of half what you expect. A bit like, but Leicester won the league, right? And you now look back at the Leicester team and actually say, wait a minute, everything that Nuno's saying about the recruitment, you think of the players, Ranieri had in that side, Mahrez, other players, and they're just consistently very good, and they didn't fall away, did they?
No,
they just didn't. So maybe you look back on that, and at the time thinking it was a blip, a freak, but actually, maybe not. Actually, maybe that's a precursor of what's going to start happening, which is maybe other teams actually winning the league, other than the sort of the traditional big 3, 4, 5 or 6.
All the Big Six mantle does is put more pressure on those managers, which is what Mourinho was hinting, who take those jobs. As soon as they take those jobs, there's an expectation that often outweighs, without mentioning any names, outweighs the wage bill and the spend on players. So you get all that pressure, but maybe not the finance to kind of live up to the expectation.
Yeah, I mean, and they would argue at United, like Amarin's come in and he's basically trying to say this sort of thing. Ten Hag has said it, but you still, because it's Manchester United, for all the sort of soap opera reasons, never mind the sort of record 20 league titles going to be equalled, obviously, by Liverpool this season, that it's unfair that United managers or United is expected to sort of be a winning machine, because it's just not been true for sort of 13, 14 years with regards to even challenging for the Championship or the Champions League. And but maybe, from United's point of view, obviously a club I cover all the time, it'll start to level out a little bit. There is something about Manchester United in our consciousness that attracts all the time. Whatever occurs there it is of interest, whether you like football or not. Actually, it's kind of like the royal family. It's like an institution, isn't it? That people just have an interest.
The comments from Amorim about Bruno Fernandes saying he's not going anywhere because I'm told him he's not. I mean, if only football worked like that. Although, look, having Amorim there gives them more of a chance than them keeping him, say, than maybe if Ten Hag had stayed. But I mean, look, where players want to go, they want to go. But you do sense he will be there next season.
Well, it's an interesting one because if Real Madrid, which was the report that was sort of mentioned to Ruben Amorim, were to come in with a sizable offer, I mean, first of all, the player is probably going to want to go there, to be honest.
Yeah.
And also, then you've got the Ratcliffe stroke, what we're talking about, PSR factor, yes. They're needing to sell to buy sort of thing. Listen, I think it would be madness because they're really trying to build something. And it was interesting to use the word control yesterday, Ruben Amorim said, we're in control of this situation, meaning his contract, he just signed it last summer. So obviously they hold the cards. Yeah, it's that chicken egg thing. If you try to build something, then why would you sell players? But if you need to sell players to build something, then you look around, who might it be? But yeah, I think they would be madness because for mad to allow that, because whatever the criticism of Fernandes, if you just look at his figures, I think he's played 288 games for him, and goal involvements, like sort of goals and assists, are close to 200. I mean, that's phenomenal, I would suggest, for any player, and exactly what they need, what Amorim needs. So I would be staggered if that was it, if that was. But as you just sort of said, you never know in football. If only it worked that way.
Manchester United are like Spurs in the fact that their season has really come down to the Europa League now, and these games effectively don't matter. But you can't go into these games against much better European sides in bad form. You've got to turn it on in the league to get you in shape to play in these matches and hopefully get yourself back in the Champions League, which is, to up a gear is not easy.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'll be going to Lyon next week for the opening leg in the Europa League. So obviously, the Forest game tonight. I don't know. To be honest, I think Forest probably turn them over because I just think this United team is so up and down. But you are correct, and they always say, and there is obviously more prize money for the higher up you are in the league. But if you look at a league table, it kind of tells the truth for their season. Been pretty awful, really. But yeah, a win at Forest, that'll set them up nicely. Going into, and the Europa League. Imagine if they did somehow manage to pull it off. I'm not saying they will, of course, but imagine if they managed to win that, and they're in the Champions League next season. I mean, suddenly that is a heck of a season, and everything I'm sort of saying about it being a bit disastrous turned on its head. So they still do have a fighting chance. You'd have to say it is Manchester United. I know. We're talking about legacy not counting, but you'd like to think they've got some sort of pedigree, these players, some sort of, just catching the sort of history of the club, and that could inspire them maybe to at least get to the final. I don't know.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see
what
what happens.
So far, trouble,
enjoy the game, Jamie. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Guardians man in Manchester, Jamie Jackson there. Forest, Manchester United, one of the games this evening. You'll be kept in touch with by Adrian Durham and our top team around the grounds from 7.
Paul Hawksbee and Andy Jacobs, Monday to Friday afternoons 1 till 4 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.